Hello, want to build a chat box with AppGyver? After watching this video, you can build a chatbot that talks back to you in less than 60 minutes. How to describe a chatbot? For me, a chatbot uses a conversational artificial intelligence as a synthetic brain power that makes machines capable of understanding, processing, and responding to human language. For this tutorial, I will use Facebook blenderbot machine learning model to build a conversational flows for our chatbot. The model is hosted on a website called Huggingface, which I've used in previous tutorials already. Huggingface website hosts more than 80,000 publicly accessible machine learning models, which you can test and evaluate for free for non-production projects. This is not sponsored at all. I just like this website. It's a good introduction of what machine learning can do. Just try it out, have a look at it. It's so much fun. I will add links to Huggingface and the Facebook blenderbot in the description below. I think you find it interesting in how to build this app in AppGyver in the community version. If you want to learn more about the different versions, please let me know in the comments below. There's so many new versions of AppGyver. Just let me know and explain to you in more details if you want to. Now, let's stop talking and start building the app.
Okay, first I have an app variable, it's called messages, which has 4 different fields or 4 different attributes: date, ID, and response. I also have a page variable, 2 page variables. One is called processing and one is called user text. And I will show more how we're going to do this, use them later. Let's first stop the navigation for the top and also the bottom. So I want to have a full screen app. So I now removed the navigation. So now I want to set up the app. One of the first thing I want to do, I actually want to remove the scrolling. I want to set the layout. So how do we do? I want to remove the padding. So I clear all paddings, make it clear, and then I'll stretch the viewport and disable scrolling. That means I want to use a full screen app. So no savior is the bottom of the screen and the top of the screen. I want to keep that in the color I decide. And the disable scrolling means that from the bottom and also the title, I don't want to scroll that. I only want to scroll the middle bit. And that's how I do this. So let's save this. So the next step is to create the container title. So give it a name. We also use a picture I already have before. And for that, I would like to set the layout, and the layout I will be setting to you can see now it goes all the way. I don't want to do that. I only want to reduce it to a particular height. So I'm going to set now the fixed height. And I'm going to set this to, let me think, 140 pixels I think looks good. And that's then the top of the page. So the next step is I'm going to put in the layout of the scrolling and the input. So we put in scroll view. First thing, we give it a name. And we'll let it set the size for this. So we want to do the whole screen for now. Now we're gonna put the input container at the bottom also. So we'll set that. Give it a name. And we're now going to start do some right and left spacing. I like to use the as I said before, the 16 standard one is nice. I use it for everything almost. I like how that feels and how that works. So we're gonna make sure it's in the middle. So we align the in the middle. And make sure everything is nicely in the middle. That's aligned and rightful. Then we can set the height. So in the input box, we have a number of sections. We have a input box on the left, and on the right side we have a icon where we do the action on. So we're first going to create now this search box. We set the bottom and top. So this is for the bottom. So this means I still can see it on the bottom also. And then again, I would like to put it in the middle. So all the boxes which go in here, I would like to be in the middle, and then I set the full width. And we'll make sure we save it. So now we're going to build the input box. We're looking for to set the name of it. It's always good to name your containers so you can find them later on. This could be anything. There's not like a rule, but just make sure that next time you know what it means and where you can find it back again. So that's actually the input box itself we're going to create now. So we have an input on the left. And on the right hand side we will then have this is then where we can have an icon in. The send icon will be in here. I call it icon. We align everything nicely in the middle. And we want to grow it maximum. We fix it to a particular width. So, and then we saved. Now we put the icon in here. We give it a name. So let's first set the icon. I use the font awesome icon set. There's multiple ones these days. I'm looking for the one which is called location, or yeah, there it is. So then that will be my button where I press on if you want to send a message to the chat box. Let's style this icon. Let's add a new color for this. It's purple, and we copy and paste. So now we have the purple. We always need to select again. So even if you create a new color, you always need to select afterwards. Then set the height of the icon. Needs to be big enough to press your finger on there, so that's why it's always good to make nice big icons, especially on mobile phones. Just check if a finger can really click on it. So the next step is now to style the input box. A couple of things we want to do. First of all, we want to remove the label, so remove that. The style, you cannot do the style here, you actually need to do the style somewhere else. So we go back, press exit, and then we actually select the style. And we're gonna start styling now. This input box is all standard. I only have one button, so I'm not gonna create a new style for it. I'm just gonna use the same style. I set all the different paddings for this first. No shadow. And it's all good. We exit from here and we press save. So let's quickly show the demo. So now you can see an input field. That's it. Okay, so now we're going to put some rounded corners around the input box. Duplicate the style again. We call it rounded corners. I set the background first to white. And now I'm gonna set first the padding. So how much padding do I have from the different sides? That gives a bit more white space, which is much easier on the eye. We'll give it a border color. We pick one from the smart one. I think that color is okay. And we set the border color to 1. So, and the only thing we need to do now is to change the shape and set the corner radius. Again, the higher the number, the more of a radius you had. So the less square it will be, the more rounded it will be. So now you can see this rounded corner with this button in the middle. All right. So the next thing we're going to install is conditional rendering. Conditional rendering is not standard piece of component. You need to find it on the marketplace. So you search for conditional rendering and you install that. Conditional rendering is really, really good for rendering one or the other component. So based on the criteria, you can show one or you can show the other one. So anything what is under the conditional rendering is option 1 or option 2. It's that order. So in this case, we're going to create the area for order messages, order not messages. So when I start my app the first time I chat, I don't have any messages. I show no messages, or I show a if we do have messages to the chatbots, we will show all those messages. So everything was under this is like, so that's the first one. And then we have, so these are the first two containers we have. So the conditional rendering, you do one or the other, or 2, 3, or 4, whatever you want. In this case, I only have 2. You give them a unique name again. So it's literally the first one or the second one. That's how you have to see. And if you look at the conditional rendering now, you have then option 2, 2 and 1, and that's then the first container on the conditional rendering, and that you can give it a name. So in this my case, I have messages, and the other one, the one below, is no messages. And then you can create some. You can use it to check if there is which one you want to show, which one is the active one. And you can use it by using any, or you can set it like this, or you actually can. Of course, the great thing is you can actually use variables in there. So I'm just gonna put a message in here, or for the no message picture. Is this a simple image? Need to style it a bit, make sure it's nicely in the middle. So now it's always nicely in the middle. So based on when you show, you can then select, you see there are messages or there's no messages. So how do I then make that decision? So if I want to show one or the other container, and I use a formula for that. And the formula is to check the app variable called messages, which have stored all my messages. And I'm just going to check if I count the number of messages in there. There's a function called count. And I go to my app variables and I check my list. This is messages, which contains a list of messages. So I can check, if it's greater than 0, so it means at least one message, then set a true value to messages. So show the messages part. And if this is false, so if that's not, so if it's 0 or less, then you set in no messages. This is way the default stuff you can do. So in my case, it's no message. So then we save this. So let me show how that works. In this case, there's no messages, so it shows the no message. So it's not much interesting to show, but that's to show you how it currently looks like. And then it nicely scales. So if you go up, you see the picture going up with the keyboard down. Okay, so the next step is we start to build out how a chatbot replies, or you send a message. So we're gonna create the part now, which is for the to build messages, and we're gonna use the app variable messages. So this is the one. So we're gonna repeat. So we're gonna repeat all the messages, and there's always 2 types of messages. There's a message from me, so the one actually types out a message, and then the reply from the chat box. So it's always two messages in this case. It's different than a normal chat app because you can have multiple message you send and nobody replies, etc. So this is really focused around there. You send something and then you reply back something. So in this case, I'm going to create now the message being sent. I revert to me. And the other one is the bot. So it's always I send something and then I get a reply back from that. So this part start to create the message first. So again, in the container there's a message. And so that's the first bit. So there's a number of elements in here. It's like a little bubble, so we need to create the bubble first. So there's the text. So there's a number of couple of elements. So I have a text, which is a text bubble, and under there I actually have the time when the message is sent or received. So let's first create, as you can see, this is part of the text bubble itself. I'll then take the message and take the user input. So that's the input, so that's me. I'll take that from the list. Let's first set how we want to style this. Because I want that start to the right. So everything of that we want to go to the right. So yeah. Okay, first thing we're going to fit the content now, so that it fits nicely to the right hand side. And we're going to put a little text under it also, and that's going to be the time when the message was sent. So similar kind of idea. Put it to the right, so it goes on that side, and in that bit it's a date and time field. So let's select that also from the current one. And for that we will use a function, because we need to style the time in a particular format. So actually the field is a date and time format, and I only want to have the time. So there's a function called format data time with time zone, which formats the time field into a particular format. So I take the date and time, which contains the time when it was sent, and I format that into a particular format. And that you can see the example. So hour, minute, and then AM or PM. And example is always good to see what you're going to get. We can style this a bit more. So we then duplicate this for me. The reason I call it me because it's really specific to this particular. Want to make it white, and we want to make it a drop down, so a bit of a padding around, plus we also want to make it not a drop down, sorry, it's actually I would like to make it a shadow, so a small little shadow. And at the same time I would like to make the corners round again for this one. So that's the drop down we set here. We also set then if it's small, medium or large. And then the next thing you need to make sure you set the color. If you don't set the color, you don't get any drop down. Again, I pick a neutral one, there you can see the drop down. It now contains the whole from the whole row, and later on I will change this also. And then for the corner I would like to have the right bottom make a square, and everything else I would like to make it a circle, with a radius again, and then the bottom one square, as you can see here. It's a bit of the style what is used in other chatbots, so I just copied it a bit. You can, of course, you can do whatever you want, how you think it looks good. I like this way. So we just want to make sure it only fits the content, so we can then set this. So if you go to container, go to layout, and then you can set fit content. You can see now it's still on the left. We want to give it on the right hand, so we just need to make sure that we do our, then this one, there we go. So now we have all the messages which are sent are now on the right hand side. Bit of spacing, a bit more white space, just looks better. And the same on the other side. Of course, you could also do this on the scroll level. There's not a right or wrong here. If you do it on scroll level, you only have to do it once. I have to do that for every container. It gives a bit more flexibility in how you want to, if you want to move things around a bit more. Okay, so now we have done the me version. So now we need to have the bot reply. It looks similar. It's a bit different. We have we're gonna have a little bot icon. So the icon of the person who sends the message. In this case, I have sort of the same icon. It's a little Android icon. Then we have a bubble plus text under it. So principle is the same. Only now this is not going to be on the right hand side, it will be on the left hand side. So again, I use from Font Awesome the icon set. This is only available in the later releases, so if you've seen in the older versions, this was not there. So that's the little robot, or it's an Android icon, which I use here. That's always going to be the same for everything, so I'm not going to change it, so it's always the same. Here we're going to make a little circle around the icon, so a little white circle, so it fits exactly the content. And then we're going to just, the best thing then, quickly straight from that, you just can style it then. So the styling is straightforward. You just use the shape, and there's one called full round. It gives us a circle, and then we set the background to white. And then to give a bit more padding from each side, so you can actually see the circle also, I just do 4 and 4 on each side. So you can actually clearly see the little circle. So now we have the icon. So the next step is now to build the message part of this one. So again, it's the similar approach again. We have the message itself, and the message will be split up into 3 parts again. There is the part of the container which contains the text. And again, I'll take the data item, and I'll take the one which is called response. So that's a response from the bot. So every record will have a message which I send to the bot, and then a reply from the bot. Again, for this, the similar idea below, we will have again the same idea of the time. So this is the time it receives. So we use a similar way. We use a function. Was that first the right? Started correctly. Set the cap. And then use a function. Use a function again to set the date format in a particular similar as the one we did for the other one. So again, we format it first. We take the date time. This is the same. Normally you would have two. I only have one. This is just to simplify the whole design. Of course, you can make it much more. This is a prototype. Gives you an idea how you do this thing. So, but normally you would have two fields, one for send and one for receive. In my case, are exactly the same. Normally the bot replies quite quickly anyway. So let's start format from the idea is the same as we did before. So this is the chatbot itself, text, message, text. Again, we can, I would like to have a color, so I'm going to create a new color. I just enter here, another pink. Again, this is up to you how you want to do this. I use pink. The padding is all the same on both sides, so just to be showing the same kind of approach. For this one, I don't want to have a drop shadow. I just can take again. So instead of having the bottom right corner is 0, now if the bottom left is now 0. So again, I have this nicely squared off. But again, this is pure subjective, how you think it looks good. So it doesn't look good. I just have to make sure that I fit the content, and there you can see it now nicely. I have a time. So the only thing I want to do now is to get the icon and the text. I'd like to give them onto one line exactly. I don't want to have that big gap there. So again, how do I do that? I can set that. I can set the fit content that moves backwards. And the only thing I want to do now is to set the left a bit. So again, similar as the one on the other side we did. So just to make sure it looks the same. And I just want to have a bit of a spacing, top spacing, because it exactly. Again, there is nothing here to do you whatever you want to style this. This is not like a standard here, just the idea how much you can do here. And make sure, of course, you always save. So now we're gonna build the logic for actually sending the message. So the first thing we do is we need a variable which is linked to our value. So we can then start working with that. So we've now linked them together. And I also have a variable for processing. So if anything's being processed, I want to not be able to enter a new value. So that's why I use this one as true or false. So if it's true, then I'm processing it. I don't want to do anything with it. And if it's false, I then can enter text. I don't want to put my action on the icon itself. I want to put it on the container because it gives me a bit more space for my finger to do. So that's why I put it on top of that and not on the icon itself. So now let's start creating the code. So the first thing is an if. So we're going to check if we're processing yes or no. So we created this variable for this. Processing, if it's true or false. If it goes true, we take the top one. If it's false, we'll take the bottom one. So we need to, of course, do it when it's false and not when it's true. So we connect it from the false. So when nothing's happening, the first thing to do is the processing to true. So now it's something happening. So we can't go back into when we can't click it anymore. Then nothing happens actually until the process finishes. We will then do a bit of JavaScript, which I can talk a bit more later into details. So after we completed the JavaScript, I'll set the processing back to false. So and next thing we need to do is to clear the text. So we're back to not entered any text anymore. So that's the user text, which is linked to the input box. So we clear it afterwards. So after we click, it's cleared again. Okay, the next step is then to show Huggingface. So Huggingface is a website which has all the different ML models. All we're going to do now is to find the model we're going to use. In this case, is the 3 billion blenderbot. There's a smaller version of that one also, a 90 million, 2.7 billion. That's the number of text it's trained with. The smaller the model, the less good replies it does, but it does go quicker in replying. So I took this case at the 3 billion, what has is like a bit of the more bigger one. So now we're going to use, we can go to this has built in, some of these models have standard APIs. That's the great thing about it. It's literally copy and pasting this code then, which we then can use in our script. So this is the script. So let me take you to the script. There's a link in the description below, so where you can find all the code. So you don't have to, I'm not going to retype it in here. It's a bit of a way so I can explain a bit how it works. So the first thing is actually you call the data. So this is when actually you call Huggingface and you get, so with some input values, which in this case is a table, and I set it up. Next step is to get the input values. So these are the ticket variables coming from the input. There's two of them. There's messages and user text. So I need to link those ones now. Oh, make sure I use the correct naming. It's like my app variables. So this is my input. So this is what I get into my function, in my JavaScript function. The next one is user text. So this is the input field which I enter the text in. I want to ask the bot. That goes in also as an input. But those are my two input fields. You can of course create multiple ones. And then how you then retrieve them from input field is message, or you can do a constant and then put them between brackets, and you're able to then read them out of your inputs. So that gives me the input, it gives me the variable message and user text where I can start now using. Then I created two parts. One is about past input. So what have I input before? That is an input. So if this means it has our bot has a kind of a memory. And then the second thing is about the responses, which comes out of that one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all my messages, and I'm going to copy and paste what is in those messages, and I put them into a local structure, which is the right structure I can use then to post to Huggingface API. So all the user input goes there and all the response in that. And that I use then, that's the memory of the bot. And every time I send that back, every time I add more messages to this, and so it continues to improve the message and also the memory. It also means that he can actually refer back to previous discussions you have during that session, which is great. Of course, it's only local storage. It will disappear again afterwards. This is the case where I put this query object together. So this is the standard format you can find on the Huggingface website. It always need to have this particular format, otherwise it will not work. And that's the input text. So I add what the response is plus the input from last time plus the new text. Here I create a new table for the messages, and I push them all the date format. So I create a new message, just one of them, and I push the time into that one. So this will be the output table. So I actually create a copy of the table and then add a new one in there with the date and format. So it's a bit of cheating, but it gives a bit of idea. So then I call actually the response. I wait until I got a response. I print it out on debugging if you really want to see it. The same with this. It shows me what I get, and then I start to prepare the output variables. I then loop through all the responses I have received, and I will then push those ones in, and then push the new one in. Set a unique ID. So this gives me a table which will be the same format as the message table, and that's then my result. It's then my output. When I'm done, I put that output then to result. Of course, you can improve this code if anything goes wrong, if there's a timeout or whatever. But this is purely like, I haven't built that in. It's purely, and now what I'm going to do now next is to actually rebuild my message table. Only now as an output. As an output, unfortunately, you cannot refer to other in tables of structures you've created. That will be really, really nice, really, really helpful, but currently it's not. You have to recreate the whole structure of the table again. And that's what I'm doing here. So if you have big tables, this is going to take you a bit of time to do. Always do those when you have an input table and then you want to output to the same table again. On the other hand, that takes a bit of time. And in this case, this particular JavaScript will take the message table, which has all the values in there, and then we'll add the additional response to it and puts out all the complete table back again as an output. So the only thing I have to do then, when I get the output and I set the variable, I just set the whole variable and just completely recopy the whole table. So that's an easy. I can just link what's coming out of my JavaScript, and I can then directly so I need to change the name of it, make it a bit more useful. And I want to do, so I want to now link a variable. So my message table, what was the input, so that has now become an output. And I can link them all together, and then I'll set the variable, which is the messages, and I'll take that from the output of the JavaScript. And I can do that by output the other one, and let's look for the chatbot, and now you can see the result, and there you go. And only if that matches, it will say if it matches yes or no. If it doesn't match, you cannot select that. So that's why it needs to be exactly matching that particular variable. Otherwise that doesn't work. Okay, so now let's test this. And literally the nice thing about this chatbot, you can ask anything you want this chatbot, and it will reply whatever it knows or doesn't know, or that's an interesting concept. It's literally, you can ask them anything. Just because I ask them just what's an iPhone. I have not trained anything. This is trained on thousands of lines of Wikipedia, lots of stuff. So it will then match it. And there's then your reply. And you literally can have a conversation with this bot because it knows it has a memory. So it actually knows what questions you ask. I can see it takes this bit. It's an interesting concept. I really like this concept. So now the next step is we want to animate the text when somebody is sending something. So it sometimes takes a bit of time. So I want to have that time when Jarvis or the chatbot is thinking. I would like to make a little animation showing then what's happening. So I'm going to use again conditional rendering for this, and there will be two states. This two states is I can do is with this thing, with this variable called processing. So when it's processing, I only show one message. I only show my my question, and then it shows a pulsating animation kind of thing, thinking kind of animation to show that that the bot is thinking. And how do I've done this? So like in the case of its processing, I show something. When it's not processing, I don't show anything. It actually says nothing. So it's just an empty container where it doesn't do anything. I'm just going to put it on top here so I can actually show you how it works. And then afterwards I can move it back down again. So I do a copy and paste. Makes this easier for me too. Again, this is the message. The other one is the bot. So the idea is exactly the same. It's now thinking about. So there's two of them, is the bot thinking and the bot not thinking. So that message will be just the text I've entered into the input field. So I'll pick that one up. And that's the user text, so that's the text. Leave everything the same. That date, I'm just going to do now, which is a bit it's a bit cheating, but it shows you just the current date when you sent it, because that's what you sent it, so that's why it is. And then the next bit, the thinking bit, I want to remove the text from this now. I don't want to show this bubble. I just want to have I just want to have a little pulsating thing, so it says. So I'm gonna move the text out and then remove this one, so I only have left that one. That is going to be back as a static piece of text, and literally it says thinking. Really straightforward. Just say thinking. Clean up the layout a bit, make sure it all aligns the same place, as clear as one. So, and then we'll put that one in the middle. Again, this is something I just want to make it less visible, so I'm gonna just reduce the contrast by making it lighter gray. Again, this is all up to you. I'm just showing you the concept of how this is done. So we've now two of them. We have the thinking one and the processing one. we just need to set the reason when we're showing this, and we're only showing this. So we just need to change the options. And again, this is what is called processing. Again, that's the first element. Or this, the first container under, or the first element under this particular conditional rendering. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be the container. In this case, I use containers because it does nicely to. So now we have both of them. And then when do we want to see this now? And that's a formula. Copy this one. It's like if processing. So if the local page variable is processing, then I want to show the processing was. Otherwise, I would show the. So this after you click the button. So then you show processing. Otherwise, you show nothing. So standard is nothing. I just want to then move it up. The only reason why I did this is to make it more visible for everybody to see. So just going to make this, give it a bit of a different ID. So for me, it's easier to find it later on. So going back to the code. So now we want to animate our one. Well, again, it's not standard, so we need to look for two components. One is called animating, and it's start animating, and the other one actually is called stop animating, because we want to really stop the element. We don't want to let it go animating. We just kind of do it, put it in a loop, and then after we finish the animation, we stop the component doing the animation. So directly when you come out of the if, we would like to directly execute this particular start animation. Need to find the component then, which one we want to animate. So we can do anything. In this case, we are looking for our taking texting. That's the one. That's the one we want to animate. Flash. There's no multiple options. I use the flash one. Again, how long is the animation? This is 3 seconds, so 3000 milliseconds. And the main thing, I would like to leave it in a loop. So it will continue to do this animation until you stop it. And then here again, you select the component when you want to stop to do the animation. Made the mistake here. Just did the wrong one, so I need to redo this. So that's why I'm actually redoing this again. I have to make sure that I also update, of course, the because by changing the text of a box doesn't mean you actually change the box itself. These have unique IDs. It's just an element of that is the text. So we just need to find, looking for it again, and reassign it again correctly. That's what I do now again. So that's a good lesson. When you change just the text, doesn't mean you actually change the component itself. It's just an attribute of that particular component. And then a couple of small little tweaks. It doesn't have enough space to show the drop down, the shadow. So I'm just gonna create a bit more space around that particular element. And by doing that, I create more space. And means more space, it actually shows the animation, or it shows the shadow also more. And that's what I do here. There you can see the shadow much better, like this. Again, small little tweaks you can do to make sure it looks good. And this is me fixing. That looks better. Okay, so let's type something. Hello, you can see I'm fine. It actually literally starts to have that conversation with you, and it reminds you. See the thinking animation going on there, and then I get your answer like that. And you can ask it everything you want. That's the great about this chat box. I would like to thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, press the like. If you want to see more of these videos, press the subscribe. I have made a build guide for this also. You can buy this on my page. The link is below. It's really appreciated if you do this. It really helps the channel also. And then hope to see you in the next video, and stay curious.